Whether your beer is in a bottle, can, or glass, kick back and relax. It's Better on Draft.
Welcome, everybody. Episode 314 of the Better on Draft podcast. My name is Ken. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. There I go, Dan, taking ownership again. We are excited to have you on this Friday, the St. Patrick's Day of all days, which means we are going to be drinking some beer. We're going to go around, see what everybody is drinking, starting with Dan. Dan, what do you got?
All right. So first off, as usual, been the norm lately. I've got my own homebrew Scottish export, and then making another return because it was so damn good. I've got a salted caramel brownie Speedway Stout from AleSmith.
Perfect. For myself, I'm rolling with the B43 Brute New England IPA from Old Nation, as well as I've got a Partake Pale. I do have a bowling tournament I'm attending tomorrow, and I want to make sure that I can at least make it there without getting too drunk. As Nick has joined us. Nick, what are you drinking over there?
Happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody. I am living the Irish spirit. I got my Guinness on hand.
Perfect. And with us all the way from Denver, Colorado, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you do and what you're drinking?
Yeah. I was going to say, let's start out with the important things first. Morgan O'Sullivan and I am also drinking a Guinness.
Yeah.
All right. It did cut out when you were introducing who you're with, so why don't you try that introduction one more time?
Yeah, Morgan O'Sullivan, FlyteCo Brewing, here in Denver, Colorado, and drinking a Guinness on St. Patty's Day.
Perfect. So, being the business mind, we'll say, of FlyteCo, one of the things that I noticed doing a bunch of research, and before we get into the business itself, is that nearly everything that is labeled as FlyteCo explains that you are a family-friendly establishment. Facebook says it, your website says it, Untapped says it, and with a lot of new breweries becoming more 21 and up establishments, why do you think it's important for FlyteCo to be a family-friendly venue?
Yeah, there's several reasons. I really think that the core reason for us is that we focus a lot on building community and gathering our neighbors around us. And a lot of our community are families. And so when we want to create that space for them to share experiences with each other, come in and bond over their commonalities rather than divide over their differences online, families are a big part of that. And so making our space welcome to all, including those with children, has been really important to us from day one.
Well, being a brewery, obviously you serve beer. What is in it for the kids when they show up? The younger, the families, the not of drinking age, or even folks who don't want to drink when they get there. Maybe they're the designated driver.
Yeah, definitely. So we do have two locations here in Denver. The original tap room is kind of your traditional neighborhood tap room with just beers on the alcoholic side. We layered in a coffee shop for the mornings and non-alcoholic drinkers to allow the work from home crowd to kind of take over our space and use it as their own. And we added a food concept at the original with a little bagel sandwich shop so folks can come in and eat, drink, whether it's coffee to fuel up in the morning or they've earned that beer after enough Zoom calls so that they can continue to stay and enjoy the space. And then we got a wide variety of little snacky options for kids, little pizza bagels and things like that. Our new location, FlyteCo Tower, in the former Stapleton Airport location here in Denver, which is attached to a FAA control tower, has 6 lanes of bowling, an 18-hole miniature golf course, and a full arcade. So tons of fun for the whole family, in addition to a full bar and food program.
We'll talk about that a little bit because you guys took over a Punch Bowl Social that was over there. But I want to go back to the other offerings that you have because you mentioned coffee and you just mentioned morning and work from home crowd. Are you guys opening super early? What's your hours like? And is it like coffee only, or can I come up at 7 a.m. and get a latte and a smoked porter?
Yeah, so excellent question. Service starts at both locations at 7 a.m. with coffee and beer. So you can cruise in from night shift the night before and have your after work beer at 7 a.m. as soon as it's legal to serve. Or you can walk in to start your workday and get a coffee, or you can pour a beer into your coffee mug and pretend to drink coffee on your Zoom call.
We have a lot of those types of bars in the Metro Detroit area. I always refer to them as third shift bars that typically are open geared towards third shift. So they're in the Dearborn, Detroit area. Do you guys see a lot of manufacturing people, third shift people? It could be nurses, anything coming in at 7 a.m. for their after shift drink? Or is it kind of just, we've seen it before here and there?
Yeah, we've seen it before here and there. We've targeted a few times in the past. The first time that we did it was actually before we launched the coffee shop. We had the idea of doing a third shift happy hour. We weren't at a stage in our evolution where we were ready to support that yet. So now that we have the morning day part operating smoothly and kind of generating enough revenue on its own, that's definitely something that I want to revisit, is specifically targeting those audiences and kind of normalizing their behavior of, their Monday morning is actually their Friday night, and it's very normal to want to drink a beer on a Friday night. It just so happens to be 7 a.m. on Monday.
Before I pass this over to Dan, what is the genesis of the name of the brewery? Because you guys, the aviation, the tower came second. So the regular brewery was not in a airport or former airport or air controller tower. Where did FlyteCo come from?
Yeah, we kind of did it the opposite way, right? You get a lot of breweries that are named after the cool historic building that they take over initially, whether it's a firehouse or an old production plant or something like that. Our aviation background comes from both of my business partners, Eric and Jason. They're both private pilots, grew up in that world, learned from their grandfathers and their fathers as well. And so that's something that they're very passionate about. When they met each other in college at CU Boulder in the engineering program, bonded over a love of aviation. And then Eric ended up getting a Mr. Beer kit for his 21st birthday, and they made some really awful beer. And just being science nerds, kind of continued to iterate and develop processes around how, hey, could we do an all grain batch? Could we build a temperature controlled fermentation vessel? And so really just kind of approached it as a passion project and something to bond over, that and their love of airplanes. My grandfather was a pilot. A couple of my uncles are pilots. So I grew up around it, but never really got directly involved. So I'm kind of more of the representation of the wider audience, where I think planes are really cool. I like going to air shows. I enjoy it. But understanding how to translate some of their intense passion for the aviation industry and flying in general to the general public has been one of my big roles on our team. And understanding that there's this underlying commonality where everyone has this intense emotional connection to aviation and what it brings to them in their lives, whether they're fully aware of it consciously or not. If you have a heartbeat and you go to an air show, your heart beats faster. So there is this universal truth to what aviation can bring to people. And we've been able to translate that across the board, and really the brand has grown significantly because of it.
All right. First, I want to say welcome. It's always nice. These guys are in Michigan. I'm actually in Phoenix. So it's nice to have another Southwestern brewery. Come on. One thing I always like to ask when we have someone from Denver, with the number of breweries in Denver, right now you have over 150 just in Denver itself. And your neighbors, for example, all of Arizona has about 125. LA has 90. If you add Orange County, it adds about 35, 40 more. Utah and New Mexico have far less than those two. What do you do to stay competitive? It feels like you can't walk down the street without tripping over 2 or 3 breweries on a single block when you're walking around Denver. What's FlyteCo doing to stand out and bring in the customers?
Yeah, man, on paper, opening a brewery a year before the pandemic in the most competitive brewery dense market in the country, not a really smart idea. It's kind of mind-boggling that any of us survive, us included. One of the things that I think has happened in Denver, which is very interesting, is that competition breeds excellence. So with so much competition, the bar is continuously raised, and it's really developed a culture here that demands good beer and great experiential tap rooms, and just an overall aspect of Denver culture is just going walking to your local neighborhood brewery. And then there's a lot of density in and benefit from that with blocks of breweries. Our Tennyson location is one of 7 breweries, I think, within about a 3/4 of a mile walk. And it makes for a great walking tour, a great bar hop. We get a lot of tourism coming in, a lot of people staying in Airbnbs and hotels nearby, specifically for beer tourism. And collectively, I think we are more of a draw than we would be individually. And there's just, as probably with the beer industry in those other cities, there's an intense collaborative nature about us. Somebody opens up down the street and they're competition, but you also got new friends on the block, and there's somebody that you can share kegs with and share ingredients with, or ask to run to the store for you. Or, hey, are you picking up hops today? Can you grab an extra bag for me? And we're spoiled. The market is so robust here. We have access to any ingredient or piece of equipment at our fingertips. We're incredibly spoiled. There's Corky's Homebrew here in town is a homebrew shop, and I can go buy with a phone call and a 15-minute drive enough ingredients to brew 15 barrels of beer, and he'll have it in stock for me without me having to pre-order it. And I'm only doing that if I forgot to order through one of the big guys or just missed something. But we're incredibly spoiled because we have all of those resources at our fingertips. We have Fox equipment. Their warehouse is 15 minutes from the brewery in the opposite direction. I need a specialty part that is incredibly rare and hard to find, and they literally have it on the shelf sitting behind the guy at will call because so many breweries come in asking for it.
Now, you mentioned COVID and when you opened in 2019. So right before that happened, basically, talk to us about the challenges you ran into with basically the world shutting down not long after you opened the doors.
Yeah, fortunately, we've had a lot of time to talk about this because it's been a wild ride. It's incredibly tragic what happened and how impacted everybody in the world was, and the loss of life and health and access and people being siloed. It's a very traumatic experience for everyone involved, and all businesses struggled. But I think it was also kind of a defining moment for a lot of businesses like ourselves, where you were basically forced to adapt or die. And we were so early into our project. We were open exactly 1 year. We had celebrated our 1-year anniversary the week before the initial shutdown. And we were in too deep and too soon to even consider any other option to go other than forward. So we had about one sad day where we all hung our heads and, hey man, this is where the dream is going to die. And then we kind of showed up in an empty tap room that was closed to the public the next day and said, all right, what are we going to do? And we, instead of, choosing death, we chose to adapt. And that's when we developed the concept to add the coffee shop, to grow that early day part, provide some non-alcoholic options for the community, which timed out very well because COVID brought work from home culture and remote working to the forefront, and people get tired of working from home, so they go to a coffee shop. We added bagel sandwich shop to add a food component. We were seeing a lot of people come in our doors with food from neighboring restaurants, like a lot of breweries do. And two things: we saw money escaping that we could have been capturing, and we saw an experience that we weren't able to own end to end. So if somebody had a problem with their pizza that they picked up and brought in, a lot of times that was going to be wrapped up in their experience with us and their impressions of our business and what we were doing, whether it was ended up online as a Google review or just caused them to not come back because their experience was less than stellar. And we wanted to control that and own it end to end. So we innovated. We tried a lot of things. We tried different service models. We tried table service. We tried QR codes. We tried, damn near everything. A lot of it failed, thankfully, quickly and forward. And we came out the other side probably with more experience and confidence than we would have gained with 10 years of normal operation. So in hindsight, it's probably the best thing that happened to us, excluding the fact of how bad it was, obviously, for everyone. I don't want to be ignorant of that fact. But it was the best possible thing that could have happened to us. And one of the other unique instances is that a gigantic shared trauma like that really reset the starting line. We had a lot of competition in our marketplace. Everybody was stratified with their own individual experience, and they were all ahead of us. We were the new kid on the block, and they knew what they were doing. They were established. They were being distributed. They had the relationships that they needed with their community and with their vendors to survive. long term. And we were just now trying to carve out that space. And all of the sudden, one day to the next, it went from these guys being miles ahead of us to all of us being equalized and at the same starting line over again. And it was up to whoever could figure it out faster was who was going to survive. And that leveling of the playing field was an opportunity that I don't think has ever happened before or probably will ever happen again. And rather than shy away from it and try to batten down the hatches and cut costs, we decided to do the opposite. We saw opportunity everywhere we looked. We realized that if everybody's playing defense, we're going to play offense. And so we invested in ourselves. We looked at expansion. We had already gone all in. You can't go bankrupt twice in a row. So we figured if we're all in, let's go all in again. It was a fun conversation at home with our partners, but so yeah, man, we leaned into it really, really hard. I remember specifically during that time frame, always consistently quoting Forrest Gump, and just to try to get, because it was tough, man. It was sad, it was stressful, and I just kept going. After that, shrimping was easy. all the boats got sunk in the storm, man. Let's go out fishing, like you know.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, I think we were correct. Then we had no fucking clue, right? Like that was just what we were doing, like because we had to do something, otherwise you were going to go crazy. I wish I could say that we knew what we were doing. We didn't. We did the best that we could. And then in hindsight, we made some of the smartest moves that I think we'll ever make in terms of just doubling down and reinvesting in our business and ourselves and our community.
Now, when it comes to what happened during COVID, I know a lot of places, I don't know if they did in Denver, started allowing to-go sales, even if they didn't have a license to do so. It happened here in Arizona. Are those things still taking hold in Denver as more of a permanent type of situation now? I know in Michigan, they're trying to do it. Here, we actually had business owners who had the license try to fight against it and stop it, trying to hurt these businesses that didn't normally have it. So what's it like there? Are these COVID policies turning into permanent type of policies there?
Yeah, semi-permanent. I think they extended the existing COVID guidelines, let's call them, to 2025. They had a measure on the ballot this past year to make that permanent. It failed by a razor-thin margin, so I think they're going to try to propose it again before the time runs out on that. I definitely see both sides. I mean, we were able to sell beer to go before, during, and since, and we will continue to be able to regardless. It was kind of fun to watch the Wild West unfold of people ordering 64-ounce margaritas in whatever container they could bring in. I mean, people were leaving places with milk jugs. I mean, I had one regular coming in during the shutdown to get to-go beer because, she loved us and wanted to support us. And she was joking one day. She's like, man, you guys, I got to get like a bigger growler. This thing is, I'm drinking this too fast. And she's like, I need like a milk jug or something. And I look at her, I go, I'm serious. You bring a milk jug, I'll fucking fill it. And he literally the next day shows up with like a nice glass top, milk jug from a local dairy. And she thought I was joking, and I filled it on the spot. And so it was really, dude, it was fun to watch like all of the regulatory body be like, yeah, we're just going to put like the rules on pause and try to let you guys survive. And it was chaos, and it was really fun to watch. But yeah, no, it's still on the books here. It'll probably get passed before it expires. We're in a unique position to where it's not going to particularly affect us. I don't see any detriment. I don't see being in competition with a Mexican restaurant selling a to-go margarita. We're confident in the quality of our product and our service to, we're going to maintain.
Now I'm taking a look at basically stalking your LinkedIn profile. Something caught my eye is you have a bachelor's in sociology.
Yeah.
Did you?
Oh God, you're looking at LinkedIn. I gotta update that.
Did you ever anticipate while you were going to school for sociology to be running a brewery?
No, but I mean, I didn't anticipate going to school for sociology, so that kind of tracks with me. I went to see my advisor, I think my sophomore year. I was at a liberal arts school in Oregon. It's Willamette University. And I went to see my advisor sophomore year, and she says, hey, you gotta declare a major this semester. And I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. I thought I was just supposed to go to school and graduate. She goes, "Hey, what are you interested in?" I go, "Well, what do I have enough credits in to graduate on time?" And she said, "Well, I mean, if you take these sociology courses and you get into these ones, you might graduate on time." I go, "Cool, I guess I'll do sociology." It also happened to be that my all-time favorite professor taught a bunch of courses there, and he was the one that got me interested in it. And so I ended up just following him around and taking every class that he had to offer, which doubled as counting towards my major. No, I had no intention. I had no idea what I was going to do with it. People ask me that a lot. They're just like, sociology, beer, huh? So you wish you got a degree in business? And no, I use my degree more than probably most sociology majors. I manage complex social systems on a daily basis and influence crowds of people without them realizing it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I
love how you were able to spin that. That's awesome.
That was pretty good.
Now the real question is that justification for myself and the debt that I paid off, or is that actually real and exists? And I don't know, and I don't know if I want to know.
I asked myself that question when I went to get my engineering degree. So,
well, yeah, no, and hey, man, my cost of entry was a lot less. Eric has a master's in aerospace engineering, and Jason has a master's in chemical engineering. So,
yeah, they're a hell of a lot smarter than me because I only had my bachelor's in electrical. So.
They're smarter than me too, but they paid a lot more to do the same thing. So, whatever.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, one final question for you before I pass it over here to Nick. I'm taking a look at your menu, your online menu. Something that caught my eye that I used to see a lot, but you don't see anymore, is you have Randall Wednesdays. Is this something you're still doing on a regular basis? Because most places, at least I'm familiar with, that head of Randall have stopped using it altogether.
Yeah, we were doing that pretty regularly. I can't remember when we phased that out. I think we're planning on bringing it back soon. The setup and takedown, and at least out here, not enough people really knew what a Randall was. And I think at one point a little seal or something, gasket broke, and we have to reorder a part. So we're not doing it at the moment. But it's a really cool way to infuse the beer in line right before you serve it. And man, we used some fresh hops that one of our neighbors harvested from their backyard. We would do different fruit combos, spice combos. It was a really, really fun program for us creatively. And, we have a 15-barrel system. So sometimes you got to play between the lines a little bit and not make anything too wacky. And so that was really a fun way for us to express some creativity. So I hope to bring that program back. But yeah, as of right now, we're not doing Randall Wednesdays anymore.
It's funny. We actually, on the show, former host would bring in a coffee press, and we were doing something similar. A lot of fun.
Yeah, we did the coffee press thing too. We did a hop tasting class, and we made hop tea with a variety of different hops with the little tiny French presses. Nice. So we could have people, try a single hop and then try, combining them a little bit and really starting to understand where the flavors come from and how different they can be based on the temperature of water that's used, the duration. So yeah, it was really fun to connect people to the product in that way. That was one of the more fun classes I remember that we had.
Excellent. All right, Nick, I'm going to go ahead and pass it to you.
All right. Well, it's been an interesting day at the Paglia household because it's just been crazy. So I had some opportunity to kind of peruse the website for FlyteCo prior to tonight. And
this is a really good segue for me to say that I need to re-emphasize updating our digital presence.
There you go. So Ken already touched base on it. It caught my attention, the flight tower and the building of the second location that just recently, within the last year or so, just opened. First and foremost, how did you guys fall into that particular space? You had mentioned it was an international airport before Denver International opened. How did this space essentially fall into your lap, basically?
That's a really good way to describe it, fall into the lap. It's incredibly serendipitous story that has a lot of random intersections that all led to this one final destination of us occupying an airport, which is fucking wild. Pardon? Am I allowed to curse?
Yes, you're allowed to curse. Yes.
Okay, because that's my normal.
We do have the E on Apple iPod or Apple podcast.
I thought I remember reading that in the rules of engagement, but then I forgot. Yeah, no, it was a crazy evolution. I'll see if I can say it in a succinct way because there's so many different moving pieces to this. But basically, how it all went down is late 2020, early 21, we kind of decided that we wanted to start looking for a second location. Again, that growth mindset, double down. Hey, everybody's reeling back. It's probably a good time to go score a lease because somebody's closed. There's some equipment left over. Like, let's do this thing. Let's make it happen. And so we started our search late 2020, early 21. We found a spot. It was an old Cajun restaurant that had closed early in COVID, kind of out towards the new Denver airport, very fast growing community, and had a full kitchen there. And so we said, hey, you know what, let's try our hand at a brew pub. We had gone down the route of writing out our business plan, approaching some investors to bring along with us. We had signed a lease, or we're about to, I think. And we were pretty far along in that process, and, scared. It was a little bit larger than our current space. It was going to come with a full restaurant. That was complicated. We were a little nervous to approach that, but felt that it was the right decision for our growth path. And then one of our friends, investors from the original location, who happens to be in commercial real estate here in Denver as a developer, and very, very close family friend of ours that we've met through this process, but have remained close with, kind of called us out of the blue and said, hey, do you guys, the control tower's for sale. Do you guys want to go take a look? And we're like, us? Like, you want to talk to us about a 25,000 square foot control tower entertainment venue with a literal tower attached to it? Like, yeah, of course we want to go look at it, but what are we going to do with that? So we went and toured the space with them. It had been, as mentioned previously, occupied by Punch Bowl Social. They had taken the derelict control tower building and the offices attached. It sat vacant since '96. They started developing that project, I think, in 2016. They opened their doors in 17. So the development probably started before that. And they had spent a massive amount of money on build out, adding square footage, adding entertainment, adding bowling lanes. In 2019, they added an 18-hole miniature golf course on the patio, which tells you how large the patio is because there's 18 holes of mini golf and that's not even half the patio. And so like all of that was already there. It was all existing. COVID happens. They leave, assuming to come back. They go through corporate bankruptcy and restructuring, and they never reopen that location. So we walk in and it's a scene from an apocalypse movie where there's a layer of dust. There's glasses with, a little bit of beer in the bottom still sitting on the counter. There's full kegs in the cooler still hooked up to the taps. There's, something floating in the fryer because the fryer oil wasn't cleaned out before they left. It was eerie. It was weird. And yeah, I mean, long story short, we toured the building. We were terrified because we knew that we couldn't say no to the opportunity. Aviation themed brewery owned by pilots. We donate 10% of our profits to the future of aviation through local and national scholarships. And here's a air traffic control tower, former international airport. You're never going to get this shot again. So we already knew what the answer was going to be. We went through lease negotiations and tried to vet it as best we could, tried to talk ourselves out of it as best we could, built our business plan. And at the end of the day, they ended up buying the building. We signed the lease. The large part of why they bought the building is because we were willing to sign the lease. Why they trusted us at that level, I have no idea, and I never will. We're still real tight with them, so it's things are going well. Yeah, we signed the lease in November of 21 and took over and got to work, and we opened in August of 22.
I would probably have done the similar, I guess. I'm not a business guy, but I guess you can't really necessarily pass up a piece of Denver. Now, this is in Denver proper. You can't pass up on it what would probably be a historic building a former international airport. Probably was getting a lot of travel at the time at its heyday. So
yeah, it's a recognizable Denver landmark, and arguably for the region, Stapleton International Airport. It opened in 1929, and was the first regional airport of its kind west of the Mississippi. Like, it was at one point, I think, top 10 or even top 5 international airports in the world in terms of traffic. So, ton of history. Down the street, about 3/4 of a mile, is the United Training Center, which is the largest pilot training center in the world. So every pilot that flies for United or recertifies for United, currently they're graduating 80 to 100 pilots a week out of that location. And so you talk about a captive, aviation focused audience that's constantly fresh, wanting to come check out your location, and a potential corporate partner for large events, holiday parties, that kind of thing. The writing was on the wall. And then in addition to that, the neighborhood was rapidly expanding around it. There was a lot of development plans in the immediate vicinity. And since we've taken over, many of those projects are about to complete. So we have a 700 unit apartment complex opening up on the other side of our parking lot at the end of this year. There's a 300 unit going in across the street, opening up sometime at the end of next year. There's 2 400 units going in 3/4 of a mile down the street. There's another 300 unit that's opening up later this year. So our doors within 3/4 of a mile walk is going to increase by about, 2,000 in the next year and a half. And that side of Denver is a relative entertainment desert. It's a new community. It was established when the airport closed and really didn't start to take off until the last 10 years or so. And so the only other options over there are corporate chains. And you have Stanley Marketplace, the former home of Stanley Aviation, the inventors of the ejection seat. And it's a really awesome local food hall, great vibe. Stanley Beer Hall is there. They have a killer menu. And it's great, but that's the only other local option on that side of town. So these people, there's tons of population density. They're affluent. It's a pretty affluent community. So they have expendable income, and they have nowhere else to go and nothing else to do with their families. And there's a giant control tower that's literally the icon of the neighborhood. The neighborhood association, their logo is a picture of the control tower. So we're walking in and we're going, you don't have to tell anybody where we are. They can find it. It's not, we're around the corner from the Qdoba. We're across the street from the 7-Eleven. The one on the corner. No, it's like, hey, man, we're at the control tower. Oh, I know where that is. So like, it just seemed to make sense. It was tough to make it make sense on paper because it's big, it's scary. But at the end of the day, you look at that opportunity, you go, hey, man, if I'm 90 and I'm on my deathbed and I'm playing my highlight reel, which one am I going to regret more? Going for this thing and just running it into the ground, or am I going to regret not taking the opportunity? And so when you just distilled it down to that level, I wouldn't say it became easy, but it definitely became clear.
One or two more questions. I'm going to turn it back over to him. They're really pretty straightforward. When it was you mentioned it was a punch bowl social prior to. Did you guys keep any of that stuff for your customers?
Yeah.
Or did you just completely just gut it out and make it yours?
Little bit of both. So there's not a surface in that building that we didn't touch, whether sanding, restaining, painting, redecorating, bringing in new furniture. But we had a unique opportunity of taking over a space that was fully built out to handle large volumes of people, large private events. So we kept the 6 lanes of bowling alleys that were there. We kept the 18-hole miniature golf course. We added back a bunch of arcade machines that had been there previously with a partnership with a local arcade vendor. But then we leaned really hard into the aviation theme and background, trying to celebrate the history of the building and the neighborhood, educating people that, hey, your house is where a runway used to be. Your house is where the fuel depot used to be. So don't drink out of the hose. So no, we overemphasized the history of the building. We reached out and partnered with our local Air and Space Museum, Wings Over the Rockies. And so now they loan us unused museum exhibits to help decorate our space. We're currently working on a project with them. They have a landing gear from a 727 that's just massive. And we're trying to get them to help us customize the base so we can fit it through the front door and place that in the middle of the arcade as just a really cool educational, fun piece. So yeah, we completely rebranded the building as our own, and I think the way that it should have been the entire time, which is celebrating the history of it and the significance of it. But we kept all the entertainment aspects. The floor plan stayed the same. A lot of the kitchen equipment that was there was repurposed. We brought in some new, and by doing it that way, that's how we were able to open relatively on time. And we targeted opening in June. We opened in August. That's about as good as it gets in our industry. And the only way that we were able to do that is that we didn't do any construction. So it was a change of ownership, a little bit of a zone use change, and a liquor license. There was no construction project, no city permit timeline. So we didn't allow ourselves to be held hostage by the bureaucracy of city permits. And we probably would have never been able to open had we done any construction, because we wouldn't have been able to fund the gap waiting for them to respond.
Wow, unreal. One last question, turn it over to Ken. Can you get in the flight tower today?
We can, yes. Yeah, no, that's it's funny. I actually have the answer to that written down on the script at the host stand. And I told all our employees before we open, we're going to review this together, because everybody that calls and everybody that walks in the front door or at some point during their visit, they are going to ask you, can I go up in the tower? And some people are excited. Some people are angry if they can't. The top of the tower right now, the landlord replaced the roof in, I think, September of this past year. And the goal is to eventually occupy that space. We do have some egress issues to overcome. The elevator shaft is still there, but our current elevator only goes up 3 floors. So we got to figure out how to pay for an elevator that goes up to the 9th floor, which I hear is expensive. I never bought an elevator before, so I don't know from personal experience. There's about just shy of 2,000 square feet up there. There's 2 subfloors and the viewing cab itself. And so it's, a little bit bigger and more usable than it would appear at first glance. There's already utilities up there. There's plumbing, there's electricity. So the opportunity is there. And right now we're developing the 3rd floor of our building, and adding virtual golf simulators, axe throwing, and another private event space and bar. So adding about 6,500 square feet. We're installing a brew house on the 1st floor, 2.5 barrel system for pilot batches and experimental brews, as well as community collaborations. Once that project wraps sometime in mid-May, all eyes and attention go to the top of the tower. And I have a feeling at some point we might run across the correct corporate sponsor to be able to make that happen with some co-branding up at the top.
All right. Ken?
Looking at the things that you guys offer based on aviation, there's something that you guys do yearly, which is you have a little event where a couple of your teammates or somebody you pay are licensed pilots. They fly out to a hop farm over in Montrose, pick up hops, and for, as I'm told, the freshest wet hop beer a beer lover could ask for. How did this come about? How does this start, and where are we at now, and what kind of hops are you guys using for that?
Yeah, I'm really glad that you asked that question, because that's one of our favorite projects to date that seems to just get bigger every year. So it started, I think the first one we did was in 2019. And Eric, my business partner, owns an RV-10, which is an experimental aircraft that him and his dad built in his garage when he was in high school, which is always fun for him to share, because he typically tells you that after you've taken off for your first time in the plane, that it was put together by a high schooler. Fortunately, the guy's really smart, so the plane flies great. So yeah, little small 4-seater, great performance, great range. And so it was Eric's brainchild to say, hey, we have this love of aviation. We have this love of craft beer. We now own a brewery. How do we further blend those two passions? And what better way than to go fly to get your own fresh hops? There are a couple of great hop farms here in Colorado. The first time we went and did it, we flew to Paonia to Highwire Hops. He's since sold the farm and closed down. And then this past year, we went out to Montrose to Billy Goat Farms, and I think they just won an award at I forget the name of the awards festival up in Yakima for one of the best hops in the country. I think it was Cascade that they won, which is crazy because they went up to the Cascade range and from the Rockies and ended up winning the award. But yeah, so it's grown a little bit every year. We've done it as small as just one plane going to get a couple bags of hops and flying them back, while Eric's flying his plane to go get the hops. Jason's in the brew house starting the brew day. We try to time it up so that as he's landing, it's about a 30-minute drive from the airport. So as he's rolling in with big bags of hops over his shoulder in his whole Pablo Escobar moment, Jason's ready for the hops to go into the boil. And we did it because we thought it would be cool and fun for us. It started to gain some attention from the media, and so we've gotten quite a bit of attention for it over the last few years. I think if it was last year or the year before, we did a collab with 5 different breweries. And I think we had four or five planes that went that year, brought enough hops back for everyone, and then sent the fresh hops to each different brewery who are all staging their brew day in the same kind of fashion we did. And everybody made their own version. And then we did a little mini tap takeover. So each brewery had all 4 or 5 beers on at the same time. So that was a really fun way to do that. And then this past year was awesome. We've grown a little bit. We've gained some more connections. So we flew over to Montrose to Billy Goat, grabbed more hops this time. We did our own beer. And I think we had 7 different planes come with us. Friends in the industry, friends of the brewery, just people that are connected with aviation. We brought a bunch of friends. We filled all the seats. And we were fortunate enough that one of our friends had access to a Pilatus PC-12, which is a very high performance, long range, basically private jet. It's technically a turboprop, but it's got a pressurized cabin. You don't have to wear a headset. Your seat reclines. You have a tray table. I mean, it was quite the experience walking up a fold down staircase into a plane to go get hops. And I mean, the gas obviously costs more than the hops are worth. But that's not the point. And so, yeah, man, we flew out to Montrose. We had a local gal who writes for the Denver Post meet us at the airport and help shuttle us over to the hop farm. Funny enough, all those little tiny airports usually have a courtesy car that you can just borrow. So we also borrowed their courtesy car to go over. And yeah, we descended on the hop farm, got a wonderful tour. Watched them harvest the hops that we were going to use, bagged them up, and flew them back. And by the time we got back, Jason was ready again for us to throw those hops in and make the freshest wet hop beer that you can in our region, because I don't think anybody else can get them there faster than we did.
All right, I'm going to leave you with a way to increase the social media and the following for this. And I've got a great idea for you. You probably already do it and you didn't mention it. But you need to do kind of like how they do with when does the first rain start in like a really dry city and people guess a date or a time or something like that. You need to put like, all of your Mug Club members or all of your big fans, have them choose like a time of what time do you think it's going to drop into the kettle? Like the hops are going to get onto site and into the kettle. And whoever gets the winning one gets a free growler of that beer to take home when it's done.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think some engagement there. I mean, we've been fortunate enough to make enough friends in the industry and people are excited about what we're doing and they kind of want to come along with, to where, we have some really cool people flying some really cool planes out there. And I think we could also, ratchet it up a notch, and the winner of a contest gets to ride with us next time we go get hops.
I mean, that's you could probably get 250 people to literally watch somebody brew a beer, because there's a clock right behind them telling you what time it is, and they're trying to figure out, who's closer. Am I, too close, too far? What's coming on? We've got about 10 more minutes to go before we get into the final questions of the evening. A little bit about the brewery that I want to know for myself. I am not an IPA drinker, as many of the fans in the industry that listen to this podcast know. With that in mind, when I come to FlyteCo, whether it be the Tower or the original brewery, what kind of beers, what kind of variety am I going to get?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's something that we've been working on promoting since day one is I think that, unfortunately for a long time, craft beer kind of pigeonholed itself as IPA. And until, hazy started to take over, we had pigeonholed ourselves as bitter IPA. And so people associated craft beer with resinous, piney, bitter. And it's a polarizing flavor. You either really enjoy it or you absolutely detest it. And there's not a lot of in between. Hazies have helped with a little bit that in terms of like the gateway drug of hops, because people like, oh man, I don't like hops. Oh, this is delicious. It tastes like passion fruit and mango. And you're like, yeah, man, that's got twice as many hops as any other beer you've ever drank. And so many that they're just in solution. Yeah, we've always focused on a diversity of style and offerings to make sure that we maintain the inclusive culture that we're going for and we're striving for. Jason, our brewer, is relatively traditional in his approach. We have a great, traditional amber ale, a porter, a stout. We always like to have at least one or two kettle sours on. We have a killer Mexican lager, Aero Mexico. We brew that one with Motica hops from New Zealand. And it gives this little essence of lime on the aroma and right on the finish from the actual hop profile. So it's almost as if you've already added the lime to your beer without there actually being any fruit present in the beer. Other than that, I mean, they're pretty broad. We like to stay true. Every now and then we'll fruit a beer. We have a pineapple goes on right now that's phenomenal. The salt balanced with the pineapple, the hint of coriander that's hidden but adds the layer of complexity. It's almost like drinking a margarita where that salt content just, the moment you put that glass down, you want to pick it back up because your mouth dried out just enough. And then a couple others. Our guava pale ale. We do a traditional American pale with citra hops. Nice balance of a little bit of malty sweet, a little bit of hot bitterness. And then we back sweeten with about 1.5% to 2% organic guava puree by volume. And it's subtle. It's just enough for you to think that there's something there in addition to the traditional ingredients, but not enough to overtake the flavor profile of the beer. It's there to enhance it, not dominate it. If I want to drink fruit juice and alcohol, I can pour myself a screwdriver. But I want to drink a well-rounded product, then I'm gonna add fruit to the beer that kind of enhances the natural characteristics that are underlying and brings them forward rather than dominate them. And so, yeah, when it comes to beer drinkers like yourself that typically don't enjoy IPAs, we always have great options for you. And we know that. And I think that's one of the reasons that we've succeeded is because somebody can come and say, I don't like beer. And, challenge accepted. My response is, unless you're allergic to the ingredients in what I'm about to try to give you, you probably just haven't met the right beer yet.
And before we get into the final questions, there's one more thing that piqued my interest just a little bit, and I want to give you the opportunity to talk about it, and that is the beer Vets and Jets. That is your guys' cream ale, and a portion of all sales goes to a charity. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's a really cool one. So we got connected to Stripes to Bars, which is a local charity with now a little bit more of a national reach, founded by one of our neighbors in the Tennyson neighborhood there. And Clayton, it works for the Air National Guard. And I always forget his title. Sorry, Clayton. But he's in charge of all the mountain rescues or the mountain rescue division of the Air National Guard. And so they fly the Black Hawk helicopters up into the Rockies to pluck people off the side of mountains that are in precarious situations. And if we got time, I got a great story about that too. Anyway, so he came in. He's a wonderful human being and very accomplished military career. And he had started this charity to help military veterans transition out of military life into civilian life. And one of the avenues that they found was very successful was pushing them towards commercial aviation. Because of the structured framework of commercial aviation and how similar it is to military life, they found that transition was very smooth for a lot of veterans, regardless of if they have had any previous aviation training. So, I mean, you could have been a mechanic, or you could have been a Marine, you could have been a private, or you could have flown in the military. That transition seemed to work very well. And so he saw the need and started fundraising and started a nonprofit to provide scholarships and pathways for those veterans to continue on in their civilian life through commercial aviation. So we thought it was a really natural plug for us. We have a couple of veterans as investors in our business and also close personal family friends. And so we immediately said yes to the partnership. What can we do? Well, we're a brewery. So typically when we want to support a cause, we make them a beer. And we came up with the idea of Vets in Jets because their whole goal is to put vets in jets. So we named it. We decided on a cream ale because, as a very light, easy drinking, approachable style, it would be something that would be palatable to a very broad audience. That is a typically more traditional light beer. We brewed our first batch in 2019. $1 of every pint sold in the tap room went directly to that pilot scholarship. We've done that every year now with them. We typically have the beer on tap the majority of the year. Production timeline, sometimes it goes off for a little bit and then comes back, and we maintain that commitment anytime that beer is on tap. And then through their organization, they built some wonderful tools to be able to allow people to apply and then filter the candidates through. And so they end up, when it comes to the selection process, they kind of present to us with the top 3 to 5 candidates that have made it through their rounds of selection. And then we get to select a winner and award them their scholarship, which is incredibly rewarding. And funny enough, we did this in 2019. So our first scholarship check we wrote was in, I believe, April or May of 2020, which was kind of a defining moment for us because the tap room was closed. We had a mobile canning line in there to try to can some of our beer and sell to liquor stores. It wasn't on the roadmap, but we had to do something. So we got the canning line banging away in the background. No customers in the building. We had a sad trickle of to-go beer going out the front door. No employees, and there's Clayton and Eric and I and Jason are sitting there writing a scholarship check in a business that we weren't confident was ever going to reopen at that point. But it was a commitment that we made to a cause we believed in. And, when your back's to the wall, it kind of shows you who you really are. And we wanted to, if we were going to go down, we were going to go down with integrity. So we wrote the check and called the recipient with the canning line just hammering away. I couldn't hear shit. And awarded the scholarship. And thankfully we made it through, and we've been able to do that every year since. And that's one of my favorite collabs to date. And one of my favorite calls to make every year is that scholarship call.
Perfect. Well, let's get to the final questions before we send you on your way, potentially back to the brewery to see what mess is going on St. Patrick's Day. Nick, what's your final question?
So you're in Colorado. There's home to a lot of breweries, especially some rather big ones, some big fish in the sea. Everyone's got a guilty pleasure, and there's a couple of guilty pleasures in Colorado. What's your guilty pleasure beer?
My guilty pleasure beer, honestly, probably Guinness, or I think I might have mentioned it right before we went live. I'm not drinking a Guinness, I'm drinking a Coors Banquet.
Okay.
You gotta have something crushable in the fridge. I was telling these guys before you jumped on. My neighbor Dave works at the Coors bottling plant. He's been sober for about 12 years now, and he gets a lot of beer to take home. And so I'll get a knock on the door, hey, text message, or hey, he's the friendly neighbor over the fence. Like, I got something for you. And he hands me a couple of cases of Stubbies. And so usually my fridge is stocked with Stubbies at Coors Banquet.
Nice.
Dan, what's your final question?
We got old Johnny Lawrence over there, apparently. But my final question is, again, sticking with Denver, a lot of breweries. We talked about it earlier. Who's someone you want to collaborate with that you haven't yet?
Oh, that's a really good question. It's fun because we go to a lot of festivals together. Anybody you meet is just about as nice as the next guy. Everybody wants to work with you. Everybody wants to support you. Who would I want to collaborate with? I think Odell's has done a really good job of growing to a point where they're incredibly recognizable. But at the same time, recently they've reinvested in their communities. by opening up some really beautiful tap rooms in a few neighborhoods around the city, and really committing to provide access and cool space. They have a couple cool food programs at those spots. And so as a company that, did it, they made it, they're a big player in the distribution market in terms of, going from small to big. They're no New Belgium or, whatever, but they're still doing their thing. They've made it on the distribution side, and now they're reinvesting in tap rooms for their communities. So I think that they would be a really cool company to partner with and to learn from.
Yeah, great brewery choice. I agree.
And my final question is, I've been asking this for a lot of our previous guests, and since you guys took over a former Punch Bowl Social and there's plenty of games and things to play, what is the one drinking game or game that you drink with that you think you could just demolish your entire co-working staff with?
Ooh. So I practiced a lot of these in college. Enough to say that I would be more technically an expert in drinking games than I would be in sociology. I'd have to go with regionally, everybody describes it a little differently, but quarters or chandeliers, where you bounce the quarter into the shot glass and race around the table. If you get stuck between me and another player that knows what they're doing, I'll crush your soul. I'll make you cry and want to quit and throw up all at the same time. I have no mercy. I will just beat people to death with that game.
There's something like quarters that we used to do with instead of a quarter, it was a ping pong ball into the glass, and then you slam the beer. There's another one where it's like an elimination game with like cups in the middle, and you're trying to almost like lap someone.
Yep.
It's like a chase the ace kind of thing. So those always
that's the one I'm talking about with quarters and shot glasses. And it gets out of hand. You chase the guy in front of you, and if you make it the first time, you get to pass it anywhere. If you make it the second time, you got to pass it to your left. If you get lapped, you gotta take a drink. And
that's exactly the game that I was thinking of then, except mine was, instead of quarters, it was with a ping pong ball. I do have one suggestion I want to leave you with too, just because I'm full of them today. But because you have such a unique opportunity in Denver, there's something that I don't think is out in Denver that I think you guys can add, which I think will bring in a lot of people or a lot of curiosity. You guys should add a feather pin bowling lane, which is basically like bocce ball, but instead of balls, you're throwing basically a thing that looks like a wooden piece of cheese. Great sport, a lot of fun. We have a couple lanes here in Metro Detroit that bring a lot of people in. I think it's like a French game or a Belgian game. But yeah,
why stop there? Ask for a 5-pin lane.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Is it Canada?
Yeah. We had a couple spots here doing the duck pin bowling, which I think is starting to pick up a little bit. Faster pace, smaller footprint.
I'm kind of upset because I was in Denver for GABF last year, and Dan, we didn't know they had duck pin bowling over there.
I thought that was more of a New England
thing.
It's new. I only know of 2 or 3 spots that do it, but I could see it gaining in popularity just because of the smaller footprint, the faster pace of play. You don't have to wear the shoes. It's could be cool.
Different strategy as well.
That is going to do it. Episode 314 of the Better on Draft podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, Morgan, over at FlyteCo. Go find them in Denver, both their sites, including the brand new Tower site. And no matter what you think of your beer, we think it's Better on Draft. Have a good night.
Thanks, guys.